Hey, what's up everyone? It's Joe from HRTF, and today we're going to talk about a few Bluetooth wireless headphones. So recently, Edifier came out with the STAX SPIRIT S5, which is the successor to the S3 that I reviewed, I think, a little over a year ago. Wonderful headphone, still worthy of consideration today, which is why I wanted to include that in this roundup and head-to-head video. Then headphones.com had sent me the Focal Bathys. So huge thank you to headphones.com. It is on sale on their website right now. So if you're watching this and you've been on the fence and after watching this video you decide that the Bathys is the right one for you, be sure to take advantage of that because you're going to save $100. Retail price is $800 down to $700, which I know is kind of steep, but with the Edifier being at $500, I don't think it fully rules out something like this. The structure of this video is going to flow kind of similar to what I've done in the past, but instead of just showing you one product, we're going to compare them all side by side. So both Edifier wireless headphones use a planar magnetic driver. Now the S3 was a derivative of an Odyssey headphone project, and this was kind of, I guess, purchased. I don't know how the backstory worked, but a lot of the tech in here came from an Odyssey product that was never really sold. The S3 sounded great. I actually had a lot of good things to say about it when I did that review. And what's interesting is the S5, it changes a lot of things. It's still a closed back planar magnetic headphone, but the driver is completely different. And I will take apart or take off the top cover so you can see it. So I want to start with some basics as far as what's included in the box with all of these, in case that matters. Now keep in mind my S3 is a little bit older now, so the box and packaging has kind of seen better days, but I try to take care of my things because again, mine's not brand new, but they're not going to feel as nice as the pads on this guy. So this feels like leatherette. It never specifically said it was real leather, but it doesn't feel like a premium leather if it is. It also comes with swappable pads, and you have this like sport fabric cooling gel material. This adds a little bit of weight, but overall it's really, really comfortable and breathable. Now, the STAX S3 has no noise cancellation, active noise cancellation. So if you're concerned with background noise removal, then the gel pads mixed with no ANC makes this kind of a leaky sounding headphone. So if you are concerned with traveling and exterior noise, just keep that in mind. It's not going to do a great job of drowning it out. Then you have this compact case here. Now, the way this headphone folds up, it collapses like this. And this will be important to know because it's different with Focal, and I'll show you that. So you just stuff it in the case and close it. Depending on how you pack your bag, this is a smaller case, but it's very thick. So again, depending on the bag layout, it might not fit as well as you'd imagine. So just keep that in mind. Also comes with a 3.5mm analog cable, a USB A to C, and a 1/4" adapter. Now the analog cable does not do mic pass-through, so if you are considering using this as like a all-and-done headphone solution and also use it for gaming and chat, you have to buy something like the V-Moda mic boom, which is like 20 or 30 bucks. Plug that into the analog, and then you plug the other end into, you know, a controller or your PC, and that'll give you a microphone like dedicated on the wire. There's a little bit of latency, but it's not terrible. It can still be competitive if you want it to be, but the unit does have to be turned on for this to work. When you plug it in, it works in active mode because there's some DSP going on to alter the sound quality. Now, unboxing the S5 is going to present a very similar experience to the S3. You have, of course, a similar looking case, and then the pads, just to let you know, and these feel pretty much identical to the S3. So, and this one advertises as it being a real leather pad. So it's nice that they do real leather. I think it's a thinner leather personally. They say it's real lambskin, which is nice because even though it feels thinner, it still will hold up significantly better than an artificial leather. Now I switched to the gel pads because of a couple reasons. We'll get into that, but again, just like the S3, this does not have noise cancellation, which at a $500 Bluetooth headphone, I really wish it had. I think this is more of an issue of because it's a planar magnetic headphone than anything else because of the way they typically work with active noise cancellation, but hard to say. Either way, it doesn't have the best noise isolation if that's a thing for you. Now, this has a 1/4" and basically the exact same analog cable, or sorry, USB A to C cable. It's not super long, but long enough where if you're using this as a DAC-based headset, which I'm going to test and show you as well, it's just the right length. It doesn't have to be crazy long. This one also comes with a 3.5mm analog cable of similar length. In fact, it's the exact same cable as the S3. And again, it does not have microphone pass-through. So if you want to use this as a gaming headset, you'll need to purchase something like the V-Moda Boom. Now this is different. It's not stitched, and I actually like the S3 packaging more because frankly this thing I don't even know what the point of keeping it in here is. It has this nice little shelf to rest the headphone on, and you have this flap that's pretty flexible, because this too, when you collapse it, folds in, and you can kind of see how it goes. Let me see if I do this correctly. So this support is for the headband design. We'll put that there. We'll stuff it in. It's just weird because if you pull it out and you're like on a train or a bus, then you have to worry about that happening. So I probably myself would not be using that insert. Maybe it's good that it's removable, but it doesn't feel as nice as the other one because it was stitched. Either way, similar presentation. It's nice and thick. It's not like big from a height perspective, but it is going to push your bag out if you're looking to stuff it in there. And then you have the Bathys unboxing experience, which is obviously going to be quite different. It's a different brand. You have a very different looking case. Now this is wider from a top-down view and taller, but it's noticeably thinner. So depending on, again, your packing preferences, that's something to keep in mind. When you open this up, it's pretty simple and straightforward. You have a nice little cradle to center the ear cups in, because this does not collapse. It just rotates. Place that in here and it keeps it all nice and snug. And then as you can see, you have an analog cable, which again does not have a mic pass through, and then you have a USB DAC cable. This is also obviously going to charge it just like the others. This one's USB-C to C, whereas the Edifiers are A to C. Now the Focal Bathys does not have additional ear pads included in the box. They do have very high quality real leather pads. You can see kind of that squishy nature of them. They're extremely soft, and these do a really good job of blocking exterior noise. Now there is no way to turn off active noise cancellation with the Bathys. So unlike the other two, which don't have any other option to change it, this one has transparent mode, which will use the exterior microphones to pump environment noise into the ear cups. It's really important if you're in an area where you want to listen to your music but still hear what's going on around you. So it's kind of like a pseudo open back, because other people will not hear what you're hearing. And when I say pseudo open back, I'm not talking about sound quality of music. It's literally just the environmental impact. Now the swappable pads are removable, so even though it doesn't come with extra pads, you could replace this over time. These clips are extremely small, and you can see that it was easy to pop out. It has been a little bit of a challenge to push in. You can't really do it this way like I've done with other pads. I kind of have to put my thumb on the inside, and there it goes. Now it clicks. So I wouldn't recommend messing with it too much. The Edifiers, so they have a similar issue. Now this is easier to pull off, and it's pretty easy to get back on. These clips are also very skinny. Now they changed it slightly from the S3, which is a good thing, because the S3, I actually had issues with my clips. The old ones had these little like round barbs, if you will, that stuck out. One of mine had bent just from a standard pad process. Now, the reason why I pulled these pads out were twofold. I can also show you the difference in the drivers. So the S3 is the gold driver on the left, and the new S5 uses, as you can see, a different looking driver. It actually looks a little bit larger. They advertise some similar features, but at the same time, they don't mention the phaser stuff from Odyssey on this one. So I don't know how different it is. It does affect the sound quality. They do sound different. It's not obviously just the driver change itself. You can change sound quality with these through DSP or digital signal processing, and you can also change it with ear pads, the cup depth. So many things do affect the sound quality, so keep all of that in mind. Now on the Focal Bathys, it's a dynamic driver, and yes, I'm going to remove it because as long as I'm careful, I will be fine. I just wanted to show you how this worked, because the driver has this little nice fabric screen over it. You're not going to see the inside, but the driver, you can tell, is at an angle, so it changes the way the sound is presented a little bit, where these are just much larger drivers being a planar, and they're much more straight. So all of them, I mean, this is a deep ear pad. There's a lot of space in there. It has a lot of height, so depending on your ear size, that's not going to be an issue with most of these. The S3 was the smallest feeling one, but even with my ears it was fine. So it kind of just depends on the shape of your head and how large your ears are. Now as far as build quality and comfort goes, there's some interesting things here. So the STAX S3 is actually built off the same chassis as some of their less expensive headphones, like under $100. They basically just upgraded the pads in the ear cup finish. So it doesn't feel super premium. You still have a metal headband here. It is clicky, so you can hear that. As far as it feels on your head though, the clamp force is moderate. It's not too bad. I think because ergonomically, it just feels like a less expensive chassis design. When you wear it on your head, sizing is really important, because if you tighten it up a bit, it will pull and create a little bit more pressure on the top of your ears. This is a smaller ear cup design, so you do feel the pads kind of going around your ears. And when you factor that in with these leatherette pads, if you're using these instead of the more breathable ones, comfort will vary greatly depending on your head shape and ears. So this one is not like a black and white. It's going to feel great. Clamp force isn't bad. Weight's not bad either. It's in like the 330 gram range. So even though it's a planar and it has an 80-hour battery life, the weight's actually quite decent considering it. It's significantly lighter than the Odyssey Maxwell, for example, which is another wireless headphone. Now, the S5 does feel like an upgrade in a few key areas. One, it looks a little bit nicer. You have actually this material right here, even though it might look somewhat basic in the video, it is a pretty premium feeling, hard but textured surface, almost like an extremely hard leather cup. So it feels nicer in hand than I think what the pictures led on to believe, because if you just look at it like that quickly, it just seems like an all plastic build. Now, if build quality or looks are an important thing to you, then yes, it does look a little bit basic, but it feels really solid in hand. You have the metal headband, which does look a lot nicer than the plastic or faux leather wrap up here, which is kind of like a thin material. So this will show fingerprints or scratch, of course, but I think this look is a little bit nicer. You have the logo here, and it too has a clicky headband. You can actually see some of the residual buildup from dust if you slide it in and out. So when I wear it though, the upgrade of the S5 becomes more apparent. So the clamp force is a little bit lighter, even though weight is slightly higher at close to 350 grams. I would much rather be wearing the S5 over the S3 just because the cups are significantly bigger. Now, I mentioned the pads. I like the gel cooling pads. If I don't have active noise cancellation, I don't need the sound isolation. And I don't think the leather pads are as good or compliant as what Focal does with the Bathys. So I just preferred this. Now, in addition to that, this had a positive impact on sound quality, which we'll get into here shortly. So just keep that in mind. The headband itself, even though it looks similar to the S3, this is easier to compress, and because the ear cups are larger, overall it's just a much more comfortable headphone than the S3. And then you have the Focal Bathys, which is to me, now looks are subjective. You might not like the way this looks. This could be too flashy, and then if you turn it on, it even illuminates. You can change the brightness of that Focal logo. So they have this in black in the Dune edition. I personally love the Dune edition because it's different, and I love the beige. I just think it looks pretty classy. The build quality feels great. I mean, you have like an Alcantara headband design. Very plush, although this is easily just as plush, if not softer to compress. So as far as a pressure point goes, I didn't have any issues with the Bathys, but this is easier to squeeze. Clamp force is a little bit stronger with the Bathys, and the weight is very similar, but the reason behind this is because you want to maintain a seal, because that's how the active noise cancellation works. Usually if a headset or headphone has active noise cancellation, it has a little bit stronger clamp force as a result, because seal is critical for that to work properly. I want to call out one odd thing about comfort. Now this swivels and I can wear it around my neck, and this one's probably the most comfortable to wear around my neck. If that's a super important thing to you to make a decision off of, that's something to consider. The S3 does it backwards, so like it faces the cups up and it puts more hard pressure here. The S5 goes the other way, and I can lay it, and this is much more comfortable to wear. The Focal Bathys, this one is funny because it wears exactly how I'd want it to. It does squeeze your neck a little bit, but I've had to take it off a couple times, again, typically when I'm traveling. I gotta warn you, if you have a beard like mine, there is something with this grill that loves to grab my beard hair. So if I look down, I don't even want to do it. It's not a pleasant feeling. It does grab the hairs, so I have to be more careful with the Bathys. It's something small, but I want to share that. Now, just as a quick comparison, this is what the Edifier STAX S3 microphone sounds like connected to my MacBook Pro. I'm just using the Voice Memos app. I'm not doing anything different in post-production. If I have to normalize the volume between the three, I might do that, and I will put that up on the screen. But this is what the S3 mic sounds like. And then this is what the new Edifier STAX S5 microphone sounds like. I wanted to see how it stacks up against the S3. I think it's comparable. They sound a little bit different. There's definitely some processing going on. But now let's move on to the Bathys. And now I'm talking to you on the Focal Bathys microphone, again, connected wirelessly to my MacBook Pro. I'm not doing any changes in post-production, but I am curious what you think about the sound. I think they're all very similar and passable in their own way, but none of them are going to be great because of the nature of how Bluetooth works. Now I want to talk to you about sound quality from an objective standpoint first, which means we're looking at measurements, not my own personal opinion. It takes my opinion out of it. And as far as the testing setup goes, I use the MacBook Pro to transmit wirelessly to each of these headphones and then record recorded the frequency response with a Gross style pinna clone. It's the KB006X. So this is going to be specific to my rig, all the frequency response measurements that you see. So don't compare it against someone else's rig. If they don't have the exact same setup, there's going to be some variance there. So I want to start with a couple things that are really interesting. First, you have the STAX SPIRIT S3, which honestly, if you're familiar with measurements, this is a nice measurement. Okay, it sounds great out of the box, and the S3 was probably one of the better sounding closed back Bluetooth headphones you could buy, period. It didn't matter what you compared it to. Has immense bass depth. The only issue that I think some people would have is a little bit forward in the 3 kilohertz region, and depending on how sensitive you are in that area, it can be a tad too forward in the upper mids as a result, or the low treble region. Again, coming down to your ear sensitivity. Now, here's the thing where it gets crazy. I think some people like the S5 because it sounds different, but when you look at the S5's frequency response, it's, I guess, a little bit better if you like more bass, and it might be a little bit better if you're sensitive to the 2500 hertz area and you want it to be less forward. I'll just be blunt, it measures worse. To me, it does not sound as good out of the box. When I first put it on, I was met with a pretty different sound experience than what I was expecting. Now, I'm trying to keep my analysis out of this. I will save that for later. So we're going to start with the basics. On the left-hand side here is your bass, and you can see that the S5 in red, using the leatherette pads, has a little bit more bass, followed by a massive, massive scoop in the 500 hertz area. Now, I asked Edifier if that was to be expected. It's not like mine's defective, and I'm just reporting my unit. This was confirmed as the way this particular headphone was tuned. Now, on my site, I can expand by looking at the bottom here and add the fabric pads, the sport fabric, and that's the blue line. And you can see why I switched to the sport fabric, because that blue line is the new sound signature just by switching to the more breathable gel infused pads. So not only was it more comfortable, but the scoop wasn't as bad, and that helps fill in the vocal region a little bit for me. It is a tad more forward in the 1 to 1.5K region, but it's minimal. And then the upper treble is, you know, close enough to be within variance of placement on the rig. So I just wanted to show you that. Now I'm going to get rid of the leatherette, and we're going to stay with what I think is the more ideal configuration with the S5. Now I want to show you the Focal Bathys and how that stacks up. And I'm going to change the color here. So the Focal Bathys kind of has a very different presentation. I'll try to see if the different color looks a little bit easier to identify. I guess that'll work. So deeper sub bass, it's actually tuned to have more elevation all the way down to 20-30 hertz, but you can see it follows the Harman curve more closely. There's a little bit more of a dip in the 200 hertz area, followed by some mid bass or mid-range emphasis. It's actually a tad forward in the 500 hertz area, a little bit of a scoop, not by much in the 1K region, and then it's filled in quite nicely. Now this area is where you're going to hear a big difference in the treble presentation. The 4K region or your pinna region, depending on your ear shape, people will hear this area very differently from each other. And the Focal Bathys is a more relaxed sound in that area, whereas both Edifiers are noticeably more forward and present. Now the S5, the blue line, has much more upper treble, so like 15,000 hertz and up. It's much more sparkly on the S5, whereas the Focal Bathys between the three rolls off a little bit more. It still sounds good, it still sounds resolving, but it's a smoother, more forgiving profile. And because it's a little bit smoother up top, even though this bass emphasis is comparable, or there's even a scoop in the 200 hertz area, it still sounds a tad warm. So it's a more neutral presentation overall. Now, all of these headphones have some ability to EQ or at least customize the sound. On the S3, you have a few different audio profiles, and then of course by switching pads, it's going to change the sound too. So play with those. This is just going by the default setting. I just wanted to show you the Bathys because one new thing that they added was the dynamic EQ preset, which pulls that mid-range down just a little bit, and it also increases your like 1.5 to 3K area. So again, if you want a little bit more upper mids and low treble, just put on dynamic mode. There's also a corrective mode where it does a listening test and it adjusts the upper mids and treble, and then you can adjust the slider to select how much of a correction you want in case the focals don't sound detailed enough to you. Anything above 50% to me was a little bit too bright. Even though I saved it at 40, every time I went back to that setting, it seemed like it was always at 50 anyway. So I'm not sure how well that UI is working, but there is a noticeable difference whether you turn it on or off. Now there's an important term called HRTF, which is short for head related transfer function. And on the Focal Bathys, it varies significantly based on placement. So if it's slightly forward, back, up, down, or you press in a little bit, it wildly changes the frequency response, much more so with pressure or compression. It lifts the upper mids and treble region. So depending on how your head is shaped and how your ear pin is, you will likely have more of a listening variance with the Bathys than many other headphones. Closebacks in general tend to vary just because that's the nature of a closeback. It's very much seal dependent, and placement plays a big role because as you change the internal volume of air from the driver to your ear, that changes the frequency response. So that's why closebacks are sensitive to that. Now the Edifier S5, the STAX SPIRIT S5, it does not have the same variance, not even close to the Bathys. So if that consistency is important to you, then the S5 definitely has an edge here. Okay, so let's talk about subjective sound quality, and you may have skipped everything else and got to this point, and that's totally fine, because frankly, I think headphones, the most important thing is sound quality and obviously their comfort and build. These all sound quite different from each other. Now, the Edifier products use a planar magnetic driver, which naturally presents things differently than a traditional dynamic anyway. However, I'm going to be blunt. I think the S3 sounds better than the S5. The S5 has some improvements. It has a seemingly lower and cleaner distortion profile. It has a more tactile bass presentation. It sounds deeper and richer. And most importantly, it has a very low noise floor. So the one drawback to the S3 is there's a faint hiss when you turn it on, and there's no way to fix that. It's just the way that unit was built, and you get some amp noise. The biggest improvement to me from the S3 to the S5 is the comfort and overall amp performance. It's completely quiet, and that does make a difference. If you're listening to this in a quiet environment, it's a lot less distracting. Now, the Focal Bathys, it has a little bit of a noise floor as well, but only when the active noise cancellation is really maxed out. Obviously, in transparency mode, you're going to have a noise floor, but in the mode it comes with by default, it's relatively quiet and clean. It's definitely more quiet than the S3. Now, noise floor aside, the tuning is a big thing. And I showed you, I guess if you skipped ahead, you didn't see this, but in my measurements, I showed that there is a massive dip at 500 Hertz on the S5. And it's noticeable. The end presentation of this is bass, or the music still sounds really thick and heavy and impactful, which some people love. That's okay. Then there is a big recess in the mids, which affects your vocals and instrument forwardness. It sounds like some of the instruments are lacking, followed by a thinner presentation up top because there's no fill in that region. What happens is somehow the music can still sound a little bit heavy and congested, and it drowns out vocals a bit. The resolution or ability to hear more of the nuances in vocals and guitar instruments are not as good on the S5. Now, I want to highlight two things with this. On the S5, switching to the soft sport fabric pads helped this area a bit. It's not perfect, but it did make an improvement for me. And you can do custom EQ with the S5. Now, the problem is they only let you go plus or minus 3 decibels, and even though it's like a pseudo parametric, you have fixed areas of that what you can adjust for each band. So the middle band effectively has 2 issues, and you have to pick which one you're trying to fix, just to keep it concise. On the app as well, you can actually select which pad you have installed, and it alters the frequency response. And I found that leaving it on the leatherette pad profile with the sport fabric pads had the best mid-range presentation. So if you're in the mood for tweaking and you like the idea of what the S5 does otherwise, that would be my starting configuration, and then you can mess around with custom EQ if you want it. It's not that it's terrible. I'm not trying to paint this in a negative light. It's a $500 headphone, so to me, it should be a little bit better in the vocal presentation. However, what stands out is it has incredible detail and clarity in terms of distortion when pushed at higher volumes. It doesn't seem to fall apart. It has a very similar presentation regardless of what volume you listen to it at. Now, because of the strong bass and the much more airy and sparkly and present upper treble, I think depending on the genre, you might still like the Edifiers more. The S3 is a more clean presentation. It's a bit bright. I don't want to say shouty, but there's definitely more bite to vocals. It's a lot more filled in the mid-range. But both of these seem to excel a lot in things like EDM, something with a lot of synthesized music, because you have that sparkly, snappy upper treble. So it sounds very energetic and very, very punchy. Now, Focal is kind of a unicorn in this area because Focal is known for dynamics or punch. And if you think about bass as like the word boom, that initial B, the first hit of the boom, is always going to sound incredible on a Focal. I really haven't heard a Focal headphone where the initial onset of the bass didn't have good dynamic punch. Focals always seem to deliver there, and that's no exception with the Bathys. It's punchy, yet there is still an insane amount of bass depth to this. Because this is a more rolled off upper treble, it may not seem as sparkly or resolving in that area because, frankly, it's more relaxed. The same byproduct of that is, regardless of what you listen to, you're going to have a pretty safe sound profile with this. It's noticeably better for acoustic music. It's noticeably better for a vocal forward mix. So if the mid-range is super important to you, I would put the Bathys first, then the older Edifier S3 in second, with the S5 in last. Now, you could make the case that the S5 is going to be the best value here once you can do more aggressive EQ, because if you are using this on an Android product that gives you onboard EQ through the device like a phone or tablet, then you can push the sound further, and that will make a much bigger difference for me. Purely from what they come out of the box and what the apps let you do, the Bathys just gives you a better end product as a result. And when I say better, that's my personal preference saying better, because I listen to a huge range of music, and that mid-range not being able to be solved without host-based EQ is an issue for me. I travel with a Pixel tablet because I like testing LDAC and all the latest features as far as Bluetooth goes, and Apple is stuck on AAC as far as your Bluetooth protocol. This supports AAC, as does Focal, and this obviously has aptX. Focal does too, but there's some parity on the Bluetooth codec side. But on an Apple device, you don't have onboard EQ with the host. So like an iPhone doesn't have an ability to change the sound profile for everything that's being sent out, or everything that's being sent to the headphone. And as a result, I'm stuck with what Edifier allows me to do. So for my phone experience, if I'm looking for something portable, then the Focal is going to give me a better listening product. On my Android side, if I can do custom EQ, this is extremely comfortable. I can really make it sound however I want, and it performs really well once you tune it. Because it has such a high power handling and low noise floor, it does sound fantastic. It just requires more EQ. I think that mid-range scoop personally was a bit of a miss, and I'm frankly surprised because the S3 was so good. I expected this to just be an incremental upgrade, if anything. Now, you can make the case that codecs might change your overall clarity and enjoyment. It won't affect tonality, though, and honestly, even AAC on Apple devices sounds good enough where most people won't hear the difference just by going to something with aptX HD or even LDAC. The S5 gives you LDAC, which is closer to like a lossless, or it's a much higher bandwidth wireless presentation. And if you have an Android device that's capable of that, you're going to get more to work with, whether you can hear that difference or not. So, and then you also have, of course, the ability to run as a USB DAC. Now, to compound things further, I'm not trying to complicate you. I tested so much with this. The Focal works perfectly on my iPhone as a USB-based headphone. I can switch it to USB mode, and you get a little bit extra battery life. It goes from 30 hours to about 35. And that sounds more clear. It's less compressed because you don't have Bluetooth, but on a lot of things you can't hear the difference anyway. It's just nice to have that overhead. On Edifiers, both the S3 and the S5, I could not get it to work on my iPhone. My iPhone said that the device was consuming or requesting too much power. It couldn't deliver it. So I couldn't actually use it as a DAC, even though technically it does work as a USB DAC-based headphone. It did work on my Pixel tablet, and it did work on my Windows and Mac computers in USB mode, whereas Focal was the only one that could work on my iPhone. Now, this review is a little bit different because I didn't go quite as in depth on each particular model, but I really wanted to paint a general picture on how all three of these compare to each other. The S5 to me was ahead of its time when it came out as far as sound performance goes on a wireless headphone. I hadn't heard a wireless headphone purely on Bluetooth terms that performed as well as this aside from the comfort and noise floor. Think of it as like the best sound you can get marred by a lower quality chassis, and that amp noise could have been an issue for some. The S5 fixed all of the issues that the S3 had, in my opinion, being comfort, build quality, the noise floor, but somehow regressed a little bit on the sound quality. It does sound better to an extent depending on the genre, but as far as neutrality goes, that mid-range suck out really had a negative impact, and I think that you really have to consider EQ to get the most out of it. The Focal is the most expensive product here, and it is the better performing product of the three. When you look at everything from top to bottom and what it does, it lacks in battery life, it lacks in some codec support, but overall there's a lot of comparability here, or it's comparable. I personally enjoy using this more when I travel because the ANC is such an important feature, and obviously because these don't have it, if that's important and this is too much, then maybe look at Apple, Bose, or Sony products, or others. I haven't used the others, to be honest, so I can't compare them to other stuff. I like the Focal just because it's a safer presentation. It's warm. It's still really resolving and clear. I can still get a lot of nuances in my music, but it's just a more forgiving everyday profile. If I don't know what I'm going to listen to, I'm still going to enjoy it. Where these can be a little bit more temperamental, but still very rewarding. So I didn't do this with any compensation. I have no special links or marketing things worked out. If you do buy a Bathys, definitely look at headphones.com. I want to give them a huge thanks again for sending me one to these. No questions asked either. They didn't say, can you do a review of this? They just straight up said, you should try this out. It's a cool headphone. And I agree. I really do like it. Big thanks to Edifier. They sent me the S3 in the past. They sent me the S5 now. They've also been very accommodating with my feedback. So again, thank you to Edifier for sending it. As you can see, it doesn't affect what I say about it. But if you found the video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd love to see you at the next video. I have a lot of stuff coming out because I will be attending the CanJam SoCal show in about a month. So if you're going, I'd love to see you there. With that being said, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.